Okay, we'll get started. If anyone has any questions, you can simply pipe in with audio, or you can send a chat message to me. Um, just a quick announcement. You should have received an email. Johnson has put together or created a Microsoft Teams meeting space for the class. I'm separate from that. I have no involvement in it at all. It's been set up. It's student run and student led. It just gives you an opportunity to meet together as a group to discuss, rap related stuff, course related, maybe your mock proposal related. And yeah, so I'll leave it up to. I sent the link out, and I've also posted it under the Blackboard shell for project management. So yeah. Oh, and there was seems to be some issues with students receiving emails that were sent via Blackboard. That was for the meetings today. Seems some of them didn't get it. I might just approach IT to see what the issue might be. But it might be you may want on your end check to see how your filters are working. So it might be end up your it might if you have Office, and it might be in your not in your focused email list, your other email lists. So those types of issues could have resulted in you not receiving that email. For those of you I didn't meet with today, you can book a time in my office hours sessions. I've blocked my office hours into 15-minute increments or blocks of time, and you can schedule time with me then. And you can do it through Calendly. Note that Calendly, that's just a stupid name, that it only is a scheduling app. It's not a meeting app, so you can schedule your time. And what it does is it populates my Microsoft Outlook calendar, so I can see the meeting times. So if you do that, and then you go to my WebEx meeting space to for us to meet and discuss. We'll say that in general, I was quite pleased with the what I've heard from students in terms of where they are in their mock proposal developments and their completion of their lit reviews. So that was good news. Okay, we are in survey methods. So material is there. I'm recording this session, and I'll break the session out, and I'll share those videos. I'll incorporate them into this week's material. So I might as well just head through into our lecture notes, our PowerPoint. Maybe I could do this as like a radio thing. Maybe like a jazzy late night radio show. So everybody, here we are. Oh, look at that. I'm a little messed up here. Yeah, hope everyone enjoying survey methods here. We're together on this show for 3 hours, talking about all the popular topics in survey methods. So grab your coffee and sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Okay, so I'm just going to go through a couple things that we went through last week in terms of survey design, and then we will design a survey. One thing I want to go over that we didn't go over last week was survey manuals. I'll have a couple of examples of those. For your work with your mock proposal, just having your survey listed in your proposal will suffice. But for more complicated surveys, the manuals become a bit more themselves complicated. Okay. So from last week, in terms of developing survey items, and we'll go through a little exercise doing that today. Focus is important. You want your questions to be very clear. You want them to cover single topics. Brevity. You don't want your survey items to be too wordy. You don't want any jargon in them, so you want clarity, and you don't want them to be overly complicated in terms of writing. One common mistake in survey design is you're all very well educated people, so your language skills are well above average, but you often sometimes have to step back and write your survey items to the reading comprehension level of your audience, which will be the kind of like at the average reading level. So it's always best to keep it very clear, focused, and short. As short as possible, with a writing complexity that is, let's say, relatively simple or basic. And you also, as we know, want to avoid any bias in terms of your item design. So, for example, bias, I don't want any leading questions. So, like we saw last week, how small are Donald Trump's hands? You don't want to make reference. You want to make basically ask someone to describe the size of Donald Trump's hands. You don't want to lead them down the path that his hands are necessarily small. So that's generating real bias. How many drinks did you have at the bar on Saturday? Did you go to a bar on Saturday night for drinks? Yes, no. If you answered yes to the previous question, how many drinks did you have? So, not that drinking is a bad thing. You can sit back and survey methods here and have yourself a glass of wine or a beer. Maybe you could, I don't know, I've never thought of it. You can maybe smoke some weed. Enjoy the show. Enjoy the show. One thing is, on this one, sometimes is one that you often see is how satisfy you with the taste and price of Big Macs. Taste and price are two separate things that you would want to measure. Big Macs may be not very tasty. Well, they're actually, I like Big Macs. And you may like the taste, but you may not like the price. I don't know how you can not like the price. And that we would break into two questions. So try to avoid absolutes. Do you never exceed the speed limit? Basically, better to ask in increments. How often do you exceed the speed limit? Most people do occasionally exceed the speed limit, unless you're getting old like me, with your hands clutched to the steering wheel in a panic state because of significant cognitive decline and difficulty monitoring the driving environment. So I don't travel anything over 60 kilometers an hour. I don't care if it's 400 series highway or back side road. Okay. It's oftentimes, and we'll look through this, it's really good to develop items along a whole, kind of like tackle the topic from multiple perspectives, right? So you kind of like, and the best example actually, in which is I'm going back to last week, is this feels like a radio show. Was the social desirability. It's a more developed example. Working on my ums. Don't want to pop the P's and the ums. Oh, I don't. This is the addictive behaviors one. I want the actual. Oh, here's what I want. Oh, I don't want my stupid video. This is a video of a video. No, stop, Richard, stop. Stop. Sorry. Let's just go to the... Okay, so the social desirability scale, it's really measuring how much people like to leave a positive impression, and or a positive, maybe a positive impression. It might be first impressions matter. Some people may, and we all do this because we are social beings. And they want to say, okay, well, you don't want to kind of like, you don't want to ask one question, right? You don't want to go, okay, so do you sometimes not tell the truth about your beliefs, or you're doing bad things or thinking bad things? That's really bad way of putting it. But what they did was, well, if social desirability is something, and it does appear to be something, to get to it, you ask a series of questions. So what you're really doing is you're treating social desirability as a construct. And for that construct, you're measuring it along a dimension. So you're kind of like creating the social desirability ruler in some sense. And the question is, if you answer it true or false, how you answer it will either tick it off as something, ooh, you're demonstrating presenting yourself in a positive light. So that's a social desirability thing. So to say, I'm always willing to admit it when I make a mistake, if you say false to that, it's an indicator of being someone who wants to very desperately try to create a false impression. I don't know, desperately is probably the best thing. But you may be pockets of these. I always try to practice what I preach. Well, I could say true to that, and I may actually believe that. And I don't find it particularly difficult to get along with loudmouthed, obnoxious people. Well, I am loudmouthed and I am obnoxious. So I'll say true. But I would be scored. So I sometimes try to get even rather than forgive and forget. I would say true to that. But someone may say, oh, well, they'll say false to that because I put the aggression in passive aggressiveness. But okay, so, and as you ask this, some of them will say yes, some will say no. And then at the end of the day, you tally it up. And you're treating social desirability as being something you can measure on a ruler or on a continuum. The lower the score, the less the person is interested in leaving a positive impression or managing or making sure that they appear socially desirable. And then at the other end, so what you do is you tackle it from a whole series of different questions that tap into the same construct. And that's oftentimes a good thing to do. And you'll see that a lot in standardized instruments. So if you're looking at, say, substance abuse, there's a DASS, there's a substance abuse scale that measures the extent on a continuum in terms of the severity of someone's abuse of substances. There's an alcohol abuse question survey or instrument, and it asks a whole series of questions. The higher you score on it, the more serious your abuse of alcohol is. So oftentimes you'll think oftentimes you don't have to do it because it's relatively straightforward, but sometimes it's good to step back and go, okay, this concept is something that is fairly robust, and I can measure this along a continuum because people will likely reside on there. Some will score really high, some will score really low. Time frequency, we'll use some examples of this. I'm not going to go over this in any detail right now. And we'll talk today about the flow of the survey, right? It is a conversation that you're having with a person. It's a stranger, and it could be online, it could be face-to-face, and we do both. We'll do intercept surveys. So we'll just walk up to people and ask them, do you mind taking a couple minutes to complete a survey? You can do telephone interviews, where you call the person up on the phone, and you can do online surveys, right? So, you can do on telephone surveys, but you can. But the thing is, you want to develop rapport. So, and what that means is you want to develop some sense of trust, and from that person that like they want to maintain this conversation. You want to maintain their interest, right? And you want to maintain their motivation. So you want trust, interest, and motivation to do it. And you do that by, and we'll see in a bit, in terms of the design or the flow of your survey. You don't want to kind of like nail them with really, deep, maybe sometimes difficult, and maybe some contentious questions. You want to get them in nice and easy, and the first few questions should tie really to the purpose of the survey. But we'll get into that in more detail. In terms of having multiple items, we talked about treating it as a continuous scale and asking multiple questions that tie into that construct. And I had as the example social desirability. Now, you can also measure it on a quasi-continuum using what are referred to as Likert scales. And those are along certain dimensions. So satisfaction, right? Very dissatisfied to very satisfied. Agreement. Strongly disagree to strongly agree. I strongly dislike to strongly like. You can ask them. You can ask those questions on a quasi-continuum using what's referred to as a Likert scale, right? And those are, as we referred to as ordinal measures. And you'll see that you can extend them out, right? You don't want to do a yes/no. A yes/no just doesn't cut it. You want to give it some kind of like stretch in terms of people's ability to respond along a like a small little ruler. What's optimal is where's my optimality? I'll come back. Optimal is you can go 4. So strongly disagree, disagree, agree, strongly agree. And then it becomes more like a preference for you, and it'll be a preference that's tied to your client. The one that when you have even number of Likert items, when you go to an odd number, what that means is you have a fence sitter. So you can have strongly disagree, disagree, then agree and strongly agree, but sandwiched in the middle you say, I neither disagree nor agree with that statement. And that allows people to be fence sitters. Some prefer that you don't do that. Some test designers and survey designers say, I don't want someone to be able to sit on the fence. I want them to make a decision one way or the other. And you could still add in an option that they had not applicable. So you can say, okay, not applicable to me. That can sometimes happen. But some people will say, okay, throw in the middle one, neither agree nor disagree, which is they feel, okay, though, for the fence sitters, they don't really have an opinion one way or the other. And others say, well, they've got to have some form of an opinion. I don't care how pronounced it is, but it's got to be one direction or the other. So that's I leave that up to you in terms of your survey design, which way you go with that. I personally, I tend to sway towards forcing the issue with a 4 or 6 point scale. You can do it the other way if you want. You can leave in the middle one. That's the fence sitter. So it looks like research is showing that you do get incremental improvements in terms of the reliability. We'll talk more about reliability in terms of construction. But the definition of reliability is essentially that if you measure them once and then you measure them again, you'll get the same results. So what they found was upwards to about 7 pronounced improvements in reliability, upwards to about 7 point scale. Once you get past the 7 point scale, then reliability starts to the increase in reliability starts to diminish. And then that ends up being a cost benefit. The cost in terms of complexity of forcing them to kind of go along a continuum of 8, 9, or 10, or 11 doesn't offset. The benefit is a lot less than the cost, right? The benefit of because an incremental increase in reliability is offset by the cost of making it much more complex. So studies generally support the notion of if you're going to use a Likert, go with 4, 5, 6, or 7. So you can use that as a rule in your survey design. Okay, just a couple of examples we went through last week on focus. Double-barreled questions, good to avoid. Okay, conventional wisdom in terms of item order. Early questions should be easy and pleasant to answer and should build rapport and trust. They should explicitly address the topic of the survey. In terms of the invitation to, I'd like you to complete a survey on McDonald's. Then the first few questions should be specifically about their experience with McDonald's. Cluster likewise questions together. When you do that, we'll go through an example of that. What that does is it reduces the cognitive demand. The person is thinking about, say, the quality of the food at McDonald's, and there was a whole series of questions on the quality of the food. You don't want bouncing around between quality of the food and, say, the physical, the satisfaction with the physical experience in terms of the restaurant, how clean it is, and blah blah blah. So you want things clustered together. And the final questions you can come in usually with your demographic questions. Okay, and just a couple points. First question should relate, as we said before, that the purpose of the statement. And the key thing is, if you don't do that, the person goes, what the hell is this survey all about anyway? They're asking me questions that don't tie to why they asked me to participate in this or complete this survey.